drug abuse, cancer,
measles, diabetes, AIDS, cancer,
drug abuse, cancer.
Good evening once again, and welcome to another Doctor on Call program. It's a pleasure as always, and of course, Dr. Nixon is with me as always. Yes, indeed, and we will be chatting with you tonight on some very interesting areas, as we usually do, of course, with the intention of sharing information with you so you can, of course, improve on your wellness. We welcome all our viewers of GBN Television 7 and 11, our friends on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, and our listeners on K105 FM. Yes. Well, tonight we're going to look at women's health. Of course, Mother's Day is coming up. It's also Nurses Week. It's also World Asthma Day. So there are a lot of things happening, and we're going to focus on our women, our mothers, their health, the importance of being healthy and all of that, considering the very important role that our women are required to play in the lives of everyone. So it's very important, and we trust that you will join us, and at some point in the program we'll open our telephone line so you can participate. You have questions or contribution you'd like to make, we'll be happy to do so. So it's a good time to welcome Doc. Doc, good evening, and it is a pleasure as always. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. And on this glorious but hot night, it's just so very hot. Please remember to take your fluids. Please remember that we have to make sure the younger, the extremes, our older people and our children both have our little ones who can't help themselves, who can't say they're thirsty. Just make sure that they're properly hydrated. It's very, very easy to get hydrated. Older people get irritable. They will just get disagreeable, and they may not sleep. They may start looking very poorly. Remember, they must have their fluids. Also, remember your neighbors who might live next door. As people get older, they lose their thirst reflex. So they don't really know that they're thirsty, and they might go eat something. Please encourage and facilitate as much as possible our seniors.
Yes, indeed. So, Doc, Mother's Day is coming up, as I said earlier on. It's usually an important time when we, take a little time off on that day to shower our mothers and so with a little extra. And not that it's not done normally, but just as a special mark, it is done. And so tonight we're gonna play that role by focusing on the importance of the health of our women and our mothers. So I would let you definitely go with that, because I know there's so much you can share with us on that, women's health. And, there are a lot of areas we can touch on within the time. So, Doc, it's over to you.
So good evening again. And, we can talk about this for a week.
Oh,
okay?
definitely. There's
so. So I want us to leave with one thing, that women in our society are indispensable. We can't do without them. First of all, women are the creator of mankind. No mother, no baby. We make eggs. No woman, no baby. We carry these babies. Yeah, we've seen all the AI stuff that you can put them in an eggshell and it will grow and they'll have a baby. Nah, certainly not in our lifetime. People will do stuff, but a viable, healthy baby grows within a mother. I might seem archaic in 2,000 years from now, but I know a viable, healthy baby grows where there's a special space created with all the all the facilities that are needed. It's like if you go into the presidential suite, they have the nice bed, proper air, proper temperature, proper humidity, clean air, clean linen, proper bathroom, accessible bathroom, just the right food, just the valet, everything that you need if you're going into a special space. That's what happens to a baby. Our women are really indispensable. I don't think anybody can ever say that women have no right in society. They do have their place. And so, first of all, I want to salute all the women, all of them. I want to salute our mothers and the people who have acted as mothers, because there are a lot of women who have not had biological children who have been super mothers to all of us. I had 3 mothers at one time, each of whom died within the same week, but they all died in the same week. I had gone through a very serious time in my life, and there were these 2 women who were giving me so much support. I was an adult, yes, but I needed that. I was away from home, away from my family, and I had these 3 women who gave me backative. That's a word, right? Who were there as backbones and supported me and understood my frailty and my need for support. And within a week, they were all gone. Very difficult time for me, but I can appreciate it because I still had my mother until a year and 2 months ago. However, the role of women, sometimes we fail to understand how important it is. Because there are things, and society has actually given us a certain mentality. They've taken women to the top of the pedestal as caregivers, as providers, as the one who leads in the family when it comes to nurturing and caring and health issues and discipline and choosing the food and making the final decision about the school and helping the homework. Totally indispensable. But who is this woman?
Right. So, Doc, right. I wanted to slip in with something, and you just made the perfect statement for me to just slip it in, and so you can just go with it. So here is what. There are 2 lines, 2 sentences basically I want to just share. The first one is, there are major differences in anatomy between males and females that require consideration. That's one. The other one is, anatomic differences between men and women go well beyond the reproductive and skeletal systems. And I rest there so that you can continue.
No, I'll continue because I want to look. We have been through the health of women, and I want us to go through it quickly again. Because in order to become a healthy mother, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
In order to have a mother who can function optimally, who can be the best she can be in the circumstances, we have to provide for her. There must be certain external influences, right? From before she's born. Meaning that woman has to be created in a crucible that has been healthy, where her own mother don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, doesn't suffer from infectious diseases, is healthy, wants her, is supported, the own mother is supported by the community in which she lives, has access to early interventions like being able to see a doctor or a nurse, going to a clinic, having her proper nutrition, blah, 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 having a certain level of education. So this is a whole big cycle, okay? So this girl is born, and in our 21st century setting, we want every child to be born in a health setting that is scientifically led. So we know people are going back to having home births, but it's not like stay home, have the baby and come in. No, there must be somebody who's trained to help you through this. You also must be educated. You must be supported during your pregnancy, regular visits. And I can tell you, I like when my patients, when you miss your first period, go to the doctor. That's the best time. Earlier the better. 6 weeks, if you get proper follow-up from the first week, 6 weeks from the first time you miss a period, right? Try and start seeing a physician the best way, because then we can follow up what the challenges are. Do you developed hypertension or diabetes in pregnancy? Do you have sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease? Do you have other diseases like lupus, etc.? That will require specialized care in order to provide a healthy offspring. There are things. Do you have HIV? Do you have other infections that can be prevented from getting into your baby? Okay? Do you have mental health illnesses? Do you have mental health issues and need extra support? Lots of stuff. So I said to women, if it's the first period, try to see the doctor. 6 weeks, don't go beyond 12 weeks. Try and go as far as early as possible for optimal care. There is a protocol for managing pregnancy. So we can determine whether your pressure is going for little, whether your kidneys are functioning, whether you're passing decent urine, whether your hemoglobin is enough to have this, so you can go through this pregnancy, whether we need to bring it in, whether we need to take it in the hospital because you seem to be losing this pregnancy, blah, blah, blah. Lots of layers on that onion. So we have to make sure that that child who is born from this pregnancy that we've taken care of is also a healthy child. So she's born in a hospital setting. And for all good, we're going to say general hospital because most people are born at a general hospital, okay? Born in the presence of sanitary conditions, trained nurses, doctors around if there are any complications, and we hope that for all good, that most pregnancies will have low complications. Can there be? Yes, there can be, okay? Sudden of setting up your blood pressure, etc. And those have their challenges. However, this girl is born and she's examined and we see that physically she's okay, neurologically she's fine, she's getting breastfed. I'm going to say this 3 times. She's getting breastfed because we all know that breast is best, especially for early brain development that is out of the uterus, because the brain is the first organ that's formed in the uterus. Breast for brain development outside of the uterus, the sucking reflexes, the other reflexes, okay? And this child is born in a hospital. She's tested as she's born for sickle cell, because maybe her dad has sickle cell trait, even if her mother doesn't have it. She's tested for that. She's given her first hepatitis B shots, even before leaving the hospital. Okay? And this child goes into a healthy environment. She should, right? Where there's a mother who can take care of her. She gets some healthy environment. There's running water. There are mosquitoes hanging around. We don't have mosquitoes. There's nobody burning coals or smoking ganja inside the house. Or we don't have wood stove inside, fireside inside where the place is all full of smoke. Nobody has a garage outside where they're running, where lead water is running on the ground. She doesn't have to walk barefoot. She gets regular meals. Her nutrition is organically based, local food. She run up and down and play. She goes to Sunday school. She goes to church. She goes to school, etc. She gets her vaccines up to 4 years. That is required. 4.5, she goes into preschool, and then she goes to primary school. And of course, it continues from there. We avoid sugar-sweetened beverages for our children, and that girl, make sure she has enough water to drink, or she balanced meal. She's safe from whatever form of abuse. There's family in the house. The people in the community don't rough her up. They're nice to her. They look out for her. They treat her well. Right? She has access to education as we know it, primary school education, high school education, or if not high school education, she can get vocational education. She can sew and do hairdressing and all other things that make this whole society complete, okay? And she grows up and she has normal periods and generally we have a healthy woman. She becomes a mother and she gets the role that her mother had, which includes providing for her own family, right? This woman, her health depends on not being abused by a partner. Her health depends on having good work that she's capable of. Whatever she's capable of, she should be able to go out if she chooses to go out and work, have an income, have her friends, have social life, have access to health care, have access to health care. Not only that it's just there, but it provides all that is required. So she can have a pap smear done, so she can have her breast examination, she can have a mammogram, she can, when she gets to 40, she can 45, she can have a colonoscopy. She has screening for hypertension and diabetes and all of those things. That is providing health to women. She has access to dental care, eye care, you name it, okay? And like I said, she lives in an environment where it's safe, where there's not shooting every day next door or people plan asking each other and all of those stuff, right? Where she and her children can live in harmony. She chooses to go to church. She can go to any church she wants, okay? She and her partner live in harmony, preferably in a marital union, but it doesn't always happen, okay? And sometimes are extended families like grandmothers and grandfathers and aunties and stuff living. But this woman, right, has a place in society. What is she responsible for now? She has to ensure that there's proper food, the nurturing of her family, okay? So apart from her reproductive responsibility, which is the primary in case of one, she has to bear the child, right? She has to give birth to the child and deal with all that could come in. And we've spoken about it. It can be normal, it can be easy, but she can also have challenges, right? We have to make sure that the facilities for her having a healthy baby and coming out alive and living after that are provided. That's what the health sector is responsible for our women and more so for our mothers, okay? But this woman has, as she finishes her reproductive role, it overlaps with other things. She has to be productive. She has got a job. She has to help the family finance. She has to even doing homework with her children, which is part of nurture, but is also ensuring that her children are prepared to join whatever productive forces there are within the country at the time. So she's faced with dual. And guess what? Sometimes she have her own mother and her grandmother who she has to help to look after as well. So she gets stuck in this sandwich generation and is expected to navigate. Therefore, we have to ensure that her mental health is of priority, okay? Because she can become overwhelmed. So she also is expected to provide guidance, positive images, she must be a role model, not only for her daughter, but also for her sons and the other kids who live in a community. As a woman and a mother, she's expected to carry herself a certain way, okay? You know, we talk about food safety, you know? It's one thing to provide food, right? But it's another thing to provide healthy food and safe foods, okay? Are we going to provide foods that are unhealthy, like we talk about sugar sweetened beverages, we talk about the highly processed foods? Our mother's going to ensure that the food that she prepares is prepared in a safe environment, that when she buys a tin of beans, that she washes the beans to ensure that her children don't get lepto from the shop where it's being stored and from a rat number one and number two on it, right? She's responsible for ensuring safety of the food. She's also responsible for ensuring that her children's hygiene is maintained so they can prevent themselves from getting skin infections and other illnesses that comes with our poor hygiene. And therefore she's called to be an example, and she's called to ensure that, to enforce the hygiene practices that occur in our home and in our surroundings. Clean our yard, take up make sure there's no garbage, no water collecting for mosquitoes, etc. Okay? No rats, no cockroaches. I mean, we probably talk about asthma, and we know cockroaches love asthmatics, right? And above all, a woman also expected to educate their children, not just academic. They're expected to make sure their children get to school. That's what mothers do, right? Ensure that the children get education. Fathers will help and provide, yes, but mothers are the ones who are the drivers of all of this, right? And they have to make sure that the kids get proper education. But who does homework in the night with children? Mothers, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of need to know, and we know that where there's lack of education in a household, there's greater challenges for poor health, right? We know there's lack of education. The children have more challenges outside. If a mother can't read what a grade 4 book is, and she's in the house, it's almost a travesty for the child. Okay, so we have to ensure that where those things are deficient, that mothers are supported so they don't have to come under stress and have any challenges, in the community dealing with things that they don't have any power over. Okay, our social facilities must be developed according to the needs of the communities, and especially as far as women are able to give support to their children. Right? But again, mothers are supposed to focus on their own health. Have you done your pap smear recently? Are you having challenges with the period? How is your breast? Right? How's your dental care? How's your mental health? Are you depressed? How are you feeling very sad? Are you not coping? How are you able to take care of your own health? Those are issues that we have to look out for to ensure that our women, our mothers in particular, have satisfactory level of care. Okay, and so whoever provides primary care, whether it is the government, whether we have a health sector, we have health insurances, whether we have a national health insurance, whatever it is, must take the health of our women and our mothers in particular into consideration because of not only their biological role, the role they have as society, the societal roles they have that extend beyond giving birth to a child. So what do we want? Before we go there, mothers are expected to diagnose. When your head hurts you, who you going to? Not your mother?
Oh, yes.
Mommy, my belly hurting me. Mommy. Mommy's expected to determine just how ill this child is, right? What is going on here? How to bring down a fever. Those simple health skills, she's expected to dominate. She's expected to have them at the tip of her fingers and to recognize, because her role as a mother is to nurture and to care physically and otherwise. Okay? We know that in absence of a mother in a family has negative effects on the family's health. That has been proven. That is statistically proven and written down. All right? What does mommy have to do? Make sure you get your vaccines. Very important in our health. We talked about it last week. Usually mothers are the one, you go to the health center and there are the mothers sitting with their children waiting for them to get their shots. That has been an established rule. Okay? But what do we have to ensure that our women do? Do that, like I said, I want to go back through. Doing your pap smears. Make sure you know your breast exam, your dental care, all of those things. And why do we have to do that? Because you are indispensable. Society requires that you're there. And so you're the health manager. That is what all mothers are. Those who manage the health of our families, right? And they should have access to services on demand as they need it. Okay? They also, especially, they're the ones who promote health. Go outside and exercise, go play. Don't eat. I'm not buying this for my child. There are mangoes in the backyard. Those are the things the women are expected to, or mothers are expected to know in order to translate into families. And so they become the ones that we expect to target when we want to do health promotion, when we want to be able to say how the other generation, how your generation moves. Women who are mothers are understanding and are more nurturing and will help to ensure that health care is at the optimal. Remember, we talked about education. An educated mother will actually ensure that her infant and her children have the best quality of care that is possible. So we've gone beyond the thing of giving a child a bottle of hot water tea to fill his belly and ensuring that he has a nutritiously sound meal at the time that's given. We don't keep him with the bottle in his mouth all day so his teeth can rotten. Right? We make sure that he doesn't go outside and pick up mangoes on the ground that are not washed so he can get worms and other parasites. And all of those things, we keep our children clean. We recognize when there are sicknesses so they can go to the health center. And there will be sicknesses. So literacy among our mothers is very important. And that is one of the things that we have to promote in order. Literacy, being able to read and write, just being able to read and write, being educated, understanding is very important in order for us to have a healthy population where mothers lead, because that is what is their role.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Indeed. So quite a bit said, and I think you've sort of laid it nicely, and I would like us to move beyond. And I want to go back. With all that being said, I want to go back to the two statements I made earlier, as it relates to the anatomic differences between women, because sometimes, for example, in sports, women are considered to be maybe less skilled, so to speak, than men. But there are some things that I guess people don't know. For example, injuries, for example, in sports with men and women. A lot of the men, they suffer from hamstring muscles. That is not the case with women. It's a little different. In other words, it's less, less prominent in women than men. What about What about the woman's anatomy that makes her different? And I want to add special. And that comparison, of course, is with men.
So women, first of all, we're made up of less muscle than men. Okay? Mm-hmm. Men are made up of more muscle and more water, so we tend to have a little more fat, and that puts us in a space for having different diseases, having like a predominance of obesity, a predominance of chronic diseases, right? That is related to obesity, right? The male anatomy is, I don't know if you can say it's simple in relation to when it comes to reproduction. I hope that's what you want to know. The female anatomy, everything is inside of the abdomen, okay? At whatever temperature inside of the abdomen is. You have the ovaries, 2 ovaries that produce eggs. Women are born with all the eggs they're going to have. So whatever you have is what determined from your great-great-great-granny, because she's the one who break your granny and make your great-granny and your granny and your mommy, okay? And you've been coming down from this woman from generations before, all right? Women are born with a defined amount of eggs. Men produce sperms in the prostate, okay? Women have a receptacle in the abdomen called a uterus. That is very, very, very highly specialized. It has layers of muscle, and women who have had children can tell you how much pain those muscles can produce, right? But that muscle also has a significant supply of blood, right? And a layer that will disappear if you're not pregnant and come back if you're pregnant. Disappear when you're not pregnant, and then it goes back to prepare your body again. So women go through these cycles, these monthly cycles which ends up in what we call menstruation. But that's a female cycle. According to the hormones that influence, your brain sends messages down to your female hormones, and they have an effect on your ovaries. Your ovaries, yes, but on your uterus as well, to prepare to accept a human to be developed inside of you. And that is very significant, because in doing this, your whole body function changes, because that little baby inside there, from his 2 cells, know that he's special. You're expected to provide food for him, food of the best quality, and he will take it, even if yours is not very, very prevalent. So in women who have low blood count, for example, from the beginning, you need a lot of blood to form the placenta, to transport food for the baby. You will feel tired because that baby is going to take what he wants. Okay? The nutrition that you have, you will feel tired because baby wants what he wants. Right? So we have all of these changes that happen in women. But figure it out. While a woman is having a baby, right, she's still expected to get up and go to work and do the regular things. And she's a mechanic, she go work. She mightn't be able to slide under the car, but because her belly is bothering. But it doesn't really matter. She's a flight attendant, she's a pilot, she's a doctor, she's an engineer, she's a neurosurgeon. Life goes on while there's a human form growing rapidly, developing at light speed inside of her abdomen. Okay? And then she gives birth, which is not necessarily the prettiest thing for most women, but it happens. In giving birth, her body changes again. Okay? Her body changes again, and now she's expected to feed this infant from her breast. But she still has to take care of the house and do all the other things. Luckily, there are some cultures where women who have children are not required to do these things. They get the woman coming to come, and all the mother does is breastfeed, and she can rest for 6 weeks, and women take care of the house and cook for the other children and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen in our society. And unfortunately as well, there are other societies, even more developed than ours, which I will not call, who do not offer women enough time to bond with their children and to, to be able to breastfeed and all the rest. So a lot of women turn to artificial feeding, which is not necessarily the best for a baby. I think we have to be grateful that our local industrial laws allow for our women to have maternity leave, paid in full for the first 3 months, and then 50% of your salary for the next 3 months.
Right.
Yet we still don't have as many babies as we need to have in the country. Our reproductivity has been dropped way below what is required for, maintenance, for maintaining our economic development.
Right. Now, Doc, I just want to go back a bit. Now, it is said and accepted that in order for a woman to make informed decisions about her health, it is very important that she understands her reproductive system. This is critical. One of the main, of course, probably the main difference between women and men. Why is that so? Why is that so important?
I don't know how to understand that question because it doesn't apply to all societies.
No. What I'm saying, right? So as it relates to making good decisions about her health, right?
Her general health.
Yeah, general health. She needs to understand her reproductive system because it's very, and you said it earlier, it's very complex, very unique. You spoke about the uterus having layers and all of that. So I just want basically us to go into some details as to why it is so important that the woman understands her reproductive system.
I don't know that we spend a lot of time explaining to women the complexities and the uniqueness of having the reproductive system that she has. What I think we've done as healthcare providers is tailor her care, right? Tailor her care according to how we expect her body to be responding because of how her reproductive system is settled. Remember me also saying about education? And I think that's one of the most important things, because while we may not sit to the woman and say, okay, here's what's happening with your body, your reproductive system does that, and that is going to happen with your gastric system and blah, blah, blah. Where we inform patients, those of us care providers, as we inform our patients, we are telling them, giving them little by little, right? Why is it that they have the challenges that they have in relation to their health? Why is it that they are expected to get earlier care? Why is it that they are expected to stick to their care? One of the fact is that women tend to be a little more adherent to any form of care. But the important thing I think I want us to consider is health-seeking behaviors among our women and our mothers in particular. Like remember I said, the health experiences for families are negative when the mother is absent. it is very important then that women are educated as to what their challenges in health are. You don't want to have a 32-year-old mother who is dying of cervical cancer and has 3 children under the age of 10, and probably one that is 2, and probably is a single mother. You don't want to have a 40-year-old or 45-year-old mother who also has 3 children, who's the chief, maybe the chief breadwinner in her family, who's dying from breast cancer. And so it is important that information that women require to stay well, to maintain their roles as leaders, because they are, even if they are not the providers of the financial part of us, women still take on the role of nurturing and running the household economically and all the rest of it. And so it is important that we keep on saying, we repeat, we emphasize how important it is for our mothers and our women in general to be well. It therefore means that when we're planning health promotion and education, we must remember, you can't, one suit don't fit everybody, okay? There are women out there who have not yet been reached because they have different demands on their daily lives. They have different access to education. They're not as academically educated, so they're not seeking the same stuff. And so in order to create an environment of equity as far as knowledge and access to care, we have to keep on promoting to those women that you are different. You can't go there and be cutlassing and digging yam and all the rest and all that all day. There's a time where you have to stop and take everybody differently, and you have to make sure that you can go and get yourself checked. Okay? So in other words, you are not a man, even if there's some tasks that you can do comparatively. There must be a point where you stop, you go get your breast examined, you figure out what's going on with my period, you figure out why is my emotions that way, you figure out what is the status of my heart, my blood pressure, my sugar, and all this, because women respond, women have different outcomes, experiences in relation to most diseases from men. Okay, a man will give a woman a child. It's one action. He has an erection, they have intercourse, he ejaculates, and the sperm swims, and the woman takes care of all of that until a child leaves home. Everything else is her responsibility. Every change that goes on in her body is her responsibility, right? And so she has to be educated. And I honestly don't think we've educated our population sufficiently, our female population, as to how the experiences are different from that of men. And especially how their emotional experiences can be challenged when they have to do both dual roles, the role of the male and the role of the female in their families, right? And again, the President of the United States canceled DEI. That's one of the biggest things, because we have to be able to ensure that women have equity when it comes to access to health care, right? You might have to provide a little more for them because they have these excessive roles.
Right, wonderful indeed. Now, being a woman comes with some complications, different to that of men. Some of these complications, of course, chronic conditions. There are some women who are more prone to some disease than men. But in terms of challenges, and we mentioned a lot about, the caregiver and taking care of the babies and all of that. One of the issues has to do with, and it's something that much people like to talk about, but the issue of abortion and care for women. The issue of unwanted pregnancy, which of course can lead to abortion, is a touchy area, but I think it is something that needs to be talked about so that people understand that when situations like that arise, one has to be very careful in handling it. Doc, can we speak a little about that? Because I know
to speak about abortion, okay,
and the complications yes,
and I will reproductive health, but abortion as an element within that. Okay,
yes.
So from a girl starts having a period, she can be a mother because a period indicates here's a uterus, that is prepared to accept a zygote. Those two cells that come and they land on the back of the uterine wall and they stay there and they grow into a baby, right? That is what a period indicates.
Mm-hmm.
It is very important that we educate appropriately. You know, don't play with little boys is not part of sexual education. Children are more exposed these days, and so we are definitely going to have to come at it more frank. I think there's still need to educate John public as to how you do it. As you know, parents, would you tell children, ask you where babies come from? Why is this person this, why that, right? Why are they going to have two babies and not one? Why are they going to have one baby and not two? And all the questions kids will ask. But I don't know that our children are yet sufficiently empowered to manage their own reproductive health. And here, the reason why we have to promote child and adolescent especially, care as a component of healthcare. There's an adolescent health policy, which does take into consideration sexual and reproductive health. It is not the only component of adolescent health, but it is a very important, because our adolescents are going through all these hormonal changes. Okay? So if our children, our adolescents are able to understand well, right, the whole reproductive scene, and are taught how to be responsible, right? You have to know outcome. If you touch the hot pot, your finger going to burn. You're not going to touch the pot again. So if we were to find ways so our young people don't get bastardized, bad education about sexual and reproductive health. If we were to have a means of where children with doubt, right, can speak to individuals who can guide them as to choices they should make, right? If we had an active, healthy adolescent care, adolescent practice existing in Grenada, we might be able to curb a lot of that. If we were able to develop a dialogue where sex and sexual behaviors are become a part of the, I'm not saying everybody talk about sex, but I'm saying our adolescent population who's at great risk should have an outlet or access to a place where they can get information about their sexual intrigue. Okay? Instead of learning from each other, instead of dealing with competitiveness and things that sexual favoritism to a young man is good for your self-esteem, is what determines whether you're good, bad, or indifferent. So there are lots of layers on this onion. Our adolescent mental health is very important. Our adolescent education is very important. Let me tell you guys something. Abortion is legal, you know. Abortion is illegal in all, if not all of the English-speaking Caribbean. Where you come from, we come from British law, okay? Abortion is illegal. And we have to make our children understand. And I've had a lot of young people who've come to me seeking abortion. And I don't do abortion for everybody to know, okay, so don't come. But you sit with a young person and you understand their confusion, right? And you ask them to let their parents come into this, to give them the support. Because the outcomes of abortion is what's worse. Because there's some statistics that I was told that people who have abortions as a means of contraception, that's what it is for a lot of people, okay, end up being pregnant within 6 months again. So you're probably likely to have another abortion. Okay, but there's so many complications that terminating a pregnancy can have, especially where it's done. If it's illegal, people will look for ways to do it backdoor. Okay, there's so many complications: excessive bleeding, people, perforating the uterus, getting infections, death is one of the big outcomes. Okay, for people having abortions, we need to talk about what this abortion thing is and why it is not good for our thing. Because on top of it, if you have an abortion, you run the risk of having challenges when you're ready to have your children with weakening of the neck of the womb. Okay, so you may have what we call spontaneous abortions or miscarriages. All right, if you have induced abortions. So I really wish our parents will not have to, are not faced with having to make that choice, right, of having their young daughters have an abortion because they'd like them to continue school. Because it is also very emotionally devastating for the young woman who has, whether she made a choice or whether the choice was made for her, it is emotionally and lifelong devastating from an emotional standpoint for the young woman who has had an abortion. And I'm not asking you this. I've had conversations with many a young woman. There are other things we need to teach our girls. Optional activity. Young people can have fun together without having sex. Okay? Optional activity. Non-use of substances like alcohol and cannabis, which our young people use, right? And other things that engage you and makes your whole inhibition become decreased, okay? And you can lead into this, all right? It is also important that you teach our boys. Girls don't get pregnant on their own. So in this whole adolescent sexual health thrust that we should have, our young men need to understand that they have a role. Every young girl who has become pregnant, right, has had to face the embarrassment. Let's say she has a baby. And there are lots of young boys who continue to go to school without their face even being known. And they're the fathers of these children. Okay? And they too don't understand what their roles are. So the adolescent sexual health component of our health, our public health care, must include education of both our male and our female young people. They're not ready for it. They can't do their homework properly. What are they going to do with baby? All right? So the whole abortion thing, I wish it were not the option we had, but if we can start to speak and start to trust and removal of all the spiritual tabooism, right? The religious taboos that surround it. I'll tell you a story. You know, always a story, right? A young woman walked into my office probably 22 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. I saw her eyes and I knew what it was. So I said to her, how can I help you? And she says, I need to have an abortion. So I started up and I said to her, who tell you come to me? Because everybody knows that I don't do abortions. And everybody knows that everybody who leaves my office has a baby. And we started to talk. I said, no, sit down, let's talk about this. And she said, I said, why do you think you should have an abortion? How old are you? I'm 21 or 22. Okay. Two things. She had just got accepted to the university. You know, all the university is? It's not going anywhere. Okay? It is not going anywhere. And she says, it's not even that. My mother and my father are going to kill me. And I said, no, they will not. Have you told your mother? She says, yes. And I said to her, what did your mother say? My mother laughed and said, just joking, go on. But I said, she believes you. Because intuitively, her mother knows that something is wrong. Of course, they behave differently, right? Your father, I cannot tell my father that. On top of it, they belong to this little evangelical church where in some of those institutions, and I'm not saying, but that's how it is in every institution, some of those institutions, we are given that guilt trip if you become sexually active or somebody, you know, or whatever it is, okay? Sex is a big sin. Well, but she says her mother was one of the spiritual leaders in the church. And she doesn't know how her mother is going to deal with it. And she knows her father is not going to talk to her. But there were two things. One, already her mother knew because she had told her, okay? She probably wished it were not so, but her mother knew. Three things. Two, she had a very supportive partner who I called and I said, you need to take this young girl and go speak to her mother. And three, her father would be upset. But that's all he's going to do, be upset. So we had a pact. She was 6 weeks pregnant. I said to her, I want you and this young man to go talk to both your parents. And I want to see you back in X amount of weeks. Okay? After 12 weeks, you really should not dare have an abortion. Okay? And I want you to come back to me and let me know what's going on. And she came back. Of course, her father is not talking to her. I said, your father's going to talk to you. When your child is born, he's going to take his grandchild and don't speak to you still, but that's his grandchild. You watch. And her mother was disappointed. And I said, I'll tell you what. If he were to have an abortion, I know people who do abortion, I just won't tell you. If you were to have an abortion and your mother should hear this out on the streets, it become a talk in the church. It becomes a talk in the community. How are you going to live that down? She said, I didn't think of that. I said, and that's what you need to think of, because that is worse than having a baby. Okay? That kind of scandal is worse than having a baby in that little environment, that little judgmental environment. But we had one pact. She had to go back to school. She had to go to university. I said, because you're going to become a parent and you're going to have responsibility, right? You're going to need to be able to provide for a child on a totally different level. Well, she said, okay. I said, you write a letter of deferral from the church, from this university, which she did. And I saw her. She came back and told me that she had spoken to her parents and her father wasn't talking to her. And eventually, she and this young man got married. They had a very stable family. She had a boy child whom her father claimed from the day he was born. Her father was actually primary caregiver for the baby because she was working. He was retired and he stayed home and took care of his grandson. And I said to you, we may have the wrong decisions initially, but it becomes a responsibility of a community to support our young women when they become pregnant. There are options for them, right? Like PAM and stuff. It becomes an option of the community to support and not to chat and make scandal and mawet, that Grenadian word, okay? And go way beyond what we need to do as human and social beings, right? We have to learn to support. But above all, we need to learn to support our young people, because it's a very difficult world for them. They're exposed to so much sexuality that becoming sexually active seems to be the way to go when it's not necessarily so, okay? So we need to push for adolescent health and adolescent health education and adolescent health sexual education for both females and males to make people knowledgeable, to make them more empowered. We can't keep information from them because they have the internet. They get anything they want, including pornography, which is the worst thing our children have access to, which is one of the things that help them, that introduces them to sexual contact because they're seeking the thrill they think they see on the internet.
So, Doc, and I listened to you carefully, and I really love the outcome of that little story you gave. But you will have to agree that circumstances can be extremely different in some situations, and not every young lady, for example, may have the parents that would probably be disappointed and not talk to her, but there is some level of support. There are situations and circumstances where that young woman will be left all alone, even without the support of the young person or the young man that is responsible. Right?
Yeah, but that's why we have social services.
Right, but social services, yes, that's one thing. But I also believe that when you do not have that support from people who you love and people who are supposed to love and care for you, it changes the whole game. How do you deal with it? How does she deal with that?
And I think it has to be dealt with on an individual level, okay?
And that's why I said there are different circumstances. Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm.
I think it must be dealt with individually. Because our young women who become pregnant need our support. Not to be taken to the doctor to extricate whatever is inside of her tummy, okay? They need our support. And I can tell you, because we have a crisis, you have to approach it in a multifaceted way, from different levels, from teaching people, from providing contraceptive, because that's one of the things that people don't want to accept, okay? From providing contraceptive. If your child is sexually active, get real. You can't put on chastity belt, okay? But, so from supporting, when I say support, I don't mean say go ahead and do it. I mean supporting our adolescents by giving them education, by empowering them to make better decisions, right? Through making sure that there is access for contraceptive, through helping them transition through pregnancy if they should become pregnant. Because I think if we go back to the beginning and do the prophylactic things, I think that we'll have less adolescent pregnancies. But people don't want you to talk to the children about contraceptive. Contraceptive is a real thing. I'm Catholic. I'm not supposed to be using contraceptive, okay? Right? But that's not necessarily the feeling in all other churches, right? Which say they don't have sex. But how are you going to tell people don't have sex? If they already start having sex? You can teach them how to make up decisions and show them what the options are, and try and explain to them why is it that having sex as young people becomes difficult, because it is emotionally very taxing for young people when they have sex. And if you ask them, a lot of people who have initiated sex, let's say first sexual encounter, will tell you they regret once it is done. What's the big intrigue about? Okay? But they regret once it is done. And especially because young adolescents have loose relationships. They're not married and have commitments and understand what it is to have one partner and all the rest of it. They're not, right? Oftentimes it's done because of peer pressure. Oftentimes done because of peer pressure or pressure from the partner. Or sometimes some of the girls are more frontish and they really want to. But they do it and get experience and like, oh my God, what did I just do? Did I give away the most important, the most precious part of my young life? Okay, but we need to support them nonetheless. And yes, I do understand that there are circumstances, right, of insufficient social support in families, but we still need to support these young people who become pregnant, and don't walk them into some doctor's office. There's a country in which I lived in the past where you can have an abortion by law, but you have to go and have counseling, you and your mother and everybody else. Well, that's the thing. Counseling.
And that's the thing, though, because I want to share with you here, and I'm saying this here based on in dire circumstances, because the World Health Organization, they are saying that, look, abortion is safe when and this is very, very important, and this is not, we need to listen and understand what is said here, right? Abortion is safe when carried out using a method recommended by the WHO, appropriate to the pregnancy duration, and by someone with the necessary skills. And here is the part I'm more concerned about. However, when women with unwanted pregnancies face barriers to obtaining quality abortion, they often resort to unsafe abortion, and that's where I think the danger is.
Okay, so and what do you think those barriers are?
No. And I was coming to say that, look, this is why it is so important, and I definitely want to support the fact that adolescent education about all of this is so critical and so important, so that these barriers can be eliminated. And the only how is with proper education. And that getting our young people to fully understand everything that is involved.
So are you saying then that we have to take our sexual education up a couple notches?
A lot of notches. We don't... Doc, you look around and see what is happening?
No.
Oh, right. This morning.
No.
Doc, this morning, let me tell you.
I'm not being Pollyanna. I'm not being Pollyanna in this, okay? I'm not being, everything is hunky-dory.
No,
but I'm saying that there are things that we need to do in our society
There's a lot.
to prevent the crisis.
This morning.
To prevent the crisis that we're currently experiencing if we have a surge in adolescent pregnancies. Let me hear what the caller has to say.
Yeah, and Doc, let me tell you, we have a situation, or the situation in Grenada is, from what I'm seeing, right? The young people who are unable to provide the necessary support for themselves are the ones that are most vulnerable. And these are the people who would find themselves in the situation with the barriers that we talk about. They're the ones faced with the barriers.
So maybe the young people who can afford to provide the situation that fixes the pregnancy, you don't see them pregnant because they've had abortions.
Not necessarily. They probably have the correct education.
I said maybe.
It could be that they do have the education that is needed
to not get pregnant.
Maybe at the time when they do, or at the time that would create problems for them.
So again, it comes back to my fundamental argument. We have to step up our adolescent health care delivery.
Definitely.
The adolescent starts at 10 and ends at 20 years.
Definitely.
In our jurisdiction.
Definitely. But,
so let's get questions.
Yeah. So folks, our telephone line is open. The number is 435. No. 2041. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can give us a call. The number again, 435-2041. Or if you'd like to make a contribution, you can definitely do so. All right? 435-2...
This bringing in the whole issue of adolescent pregnancy, because I think this is what this was, right? Means that we end up having an adolescent mother who is hardly prepared to take on the responsibilities that mothering brings. And that's unfortunate. She's not educated enough to be able to have an appropriate job. She's not even educated to take care of herself, right? The fact that she got pregnant is because her own education may have been lacking, right? And the environment in which she grows. She's not educated enough to find a job that can provide well for her and her offspring. Often there's a single parenting family. Maybe social services. Think about it. If your boyfriend is in Form 5 and you're in Form 4, he can't buy milk because he's still buying soda for lunch. Okay? And the cycle may continue unless we're able to break it by providing appropriate education, teaching adolescents the options, giving them a space which they require to seek care, especially as far as health, sexual health issues are concerned. Because remember, if you can get pregnant, right? In that contact, you can get STDs like HIV, which we spoke about last week. That's on the rise. Okay, you can get other STDs that we haven't been seeing for a while, like syphilis, and you can get HPV, which can eventually cause you to have cervical cancer. You can get herpes and chlamydia and gonorrhea and all other things that you may be infected with, especially since some of these do not really readily manifest themselves in the female. So I'm just saying, I'm just saying that if you can get pregnant, it means that you're also at risk for those things that come with unprotected sexual contact.
Yes, yes. So, Doc, I want to just move on a little bit now, and maybe just briefly touch on one of the well, I'm not sure if it's a complication, but it does have some downsides to it. The time in a woman's life when she start going through menopause, and there are some complications that I think, and I have come across people who probably don't understand it, and they've led themselves to believe that is some kind of
phobia,
some kind of thing. Yeah.
Dimmy. Mm-hmm. They do you.
Yeah. Somebody spoil you.
Oh. No. Menopause is a period in a woman's life which is kind of opposite to when she first start to have her first period. And I think a lot of us forget how moody we became when around the time for a period, and the fact that your breasts hurt and you feel bloated and you cry and you have headaches and you don't want to talk to nobody and your migraine's going to drive you crazy and all you want to eat is chocolate and ice cream and sweet food and you don't feel as good enough to do your homework. The other end of the spectrum is when that hormone starts to go the other way and you get a lot of those symptoms. Mm-hmm. What are some of the symptoms you get? And I'm going to speak very quickly because I don't think we can dedicate this program to menopause because that's a whole thing on its own.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But one, we know that menopause, as we know menopause, is that end of the life of the reproductive cycle, right? So you have the pre or the perimenopause, the time before when the hormones, the estrogen, which is the predominant, the most common hormone in the female, right? That's a hormone that make you have nice soft hair and sexy body and fat bottom and smooth skin and all the rest of it, and your breast perky. And then you get into the menopause when those hormones, that estrogen hormone, starts to decrease. And what you get hot flashes because estrogen also protects you from, it helps you to regulate your body temperature, right? So when the estrogen starts going, you get these hot flashes, your poor body don't know how to regulate. It's a cool night and you're in the bed sweating, buckets of sweat. Simply because you've lost that capacity to regulate your body temperature. And that's probably one of the most embarrassing things for women. But there's the depression and the anxiety and the feeling of hopelessness and all the rest of it that women go through, and the joint pains and the other things that they have. There's also when your body changes. Your breast is not as perky. They would look down. Your hip fat might disappear. You have fat in your tummy, places you don't want to have it, so you start to look like you play football, American football, and your bottom gets narrow and your belly gets fat and your legs get slimmer and you have a lot of breakouts, eczema and things on your skin, and your skin gets blotchy, right? And the period comes and it doesn't come, and it comes and it don't come, and it don't come and it don't come, and then it come one day when you least expect it, and all the rest. That upheaval is very difficult for women to deal with, right? And of course, you're miserable. I've always say you're miserable. Your children hide from you. Your gentleman hide from you. Your mother hide from you. Everybody, even the women, your friends who have been through the menopause, hide from you, especially because some women have it so badly. I think it's a time when women should really go sit with their doctor and talk. Mm-hmm. Ask for, if you feel all these changes, it's a good time to go to your doctor and talk, or have a group of women that you guys can sit around and share your experiences, because it's also a time when a lot of women, menopause 50 to 55, more or less, right? A lot of women may have their children gone off to college, so they have emptiness from that standpoint. They probably have gone through divorce, or their husband died, or they were single parents. So there's kind of no opposite gender support in the household, or their children not there. Maybe their grandchildren come to visit every so often. It is a very difficult time because often there's very little support within the household. Okay, and if there are people who are there, they really can't take it because you're too miserable. All right. So it's a very hard time. And I think women should seek out help. If you're really not doing well, talk to somebody, because sometimes you do need a little bit of medication to help you to deal with the depression and the anxiety, and you need someone to tell you. But to explain to you that this is normal. Okay. It's also a good time to start back doing things like exercise and, just walking, recreation, trying to take a little more care of yourselves, so you don't feel so bad of how you look. Put a little extra effort to make sure you feel that. Exercise is really very important. Nutrition is also very important. Stay away from all those fatty foods and the things that are not good for us. Try and go to as natural foods as possible. And like I said, the most important thing is seeking support. Okay, your skin get dry, having intercourse is going to be painful because estrogen that produces all the secretions in the area is not there and stuff. Okay, and this is a time, if you have a spouse, to sit and talk to your spouse about it. And I'm going to ask our men to try and understand that this is not very easy. It is not easy for women. They're not talking about the male menopause as recognizing as andropause, recognizing it as having similar symptoms, but that's still under research and not as promoted as a case of female menopause.
Mm-hmm. Right. Doc, we have a caller on the line. Let's take a call and see who is with us.
Yes, sir.
Dr. on call, good evening. Yeah.
Good evening. I think, not that I know, that maturity varies from children to children. And since that maturity varies from child to child, what age do you think is the best?
Godfrey, can you take notes because I cannot hear?
Yes, I will. Mm-hmm.
What is the best time do you think you should teach children about sexual intercourse and so on and so on? At what age do you think, seeing that the age of maturity varies, and probably experience too? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, caller. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's asking. So he's saying that of course maturity varies in terms of age and so. So he's asking, based on that, at around what age do you think young people should be taught sex education?
So and that's a good question. I think it depends. That's why families have to figure out where you are, and that is why if we have a proper adolescent health service, they'll be able to evaluate children and see where they are mentally. Because as a 10-year-old, I probably could engage. You could engage in a conversation like that. But there are 14-year-olds who are not ready for that, for being explained, how about the birds, the bees, the flowers, the trees. Okay. So I think it's an individual thing. I think families need to figure out where their children are and develop ways of sharing information, because they ask because they're curious. They ask because they've been introduced. They just don't understand what's there. And I think it is good that children ask, okay, because they don't understand. But I also think that beyond the healthcare services, I think our religious organizations or community-based organizations should find space in the services to be able to speak of the whole issue of adolescent development and be able to speak about it with a scientific, yes, a moralistic way, but scientific especially, because it is a reality. There are 9 billion people on the world, on the earth, and they all came here by the same method, except a few. Okay? 9 billion of us exist on the world. No, that's 9 million, right? That's 9 billion? Yes, right? Everybody came basically by the same method, not to mention the billions that died before us. Everybody came by the same methods. We have to remove the taboo of sex in a very healthy way, okay? Sex must be seen as a healthy activity, as an activity for adults, an activity for consenting adults who understand the consequences, and as an activity for responsible people who know that if I engage in this, these are my possible outcomes. How do I mitigate the outcomes, right? And especially understanding there's a very deep emotional and psychological component related to sexual intercourse. Right? So we need to be able to explain to our children, just hold on, Because I can tell you there are people who probably my age, and I'm not a teenager, who still don't understand the ramifications of having a sexual relationship. Okay? They still don't understand, and their failed relationships and stuff, they don't understand the function of sex, which is primarily for procreation, but they don't understand sexual intimacy and intercourse, how it, what's its role in their lives. A lot of us feel like we have to have sex. I don't have sex. No, you're not going to that. It's not on your forehead. Nobody knows whether or not you're having intercourse. Only know somebody knows if you tell them that you're not having an intercourse. That's your business. Yes, and I know people have the need, but sometimes you also have to take into consideration and teach your children to take into consideration the realities and what the possible outcomes are.
Okay, wonderful. So, Doc, and this probably might be the last area we want to talk about. We may have time, but the whole issue of aging. As it relates to all women. And I think aging is a very critical thing because people age differently. And there are people who age very well. They look very nice. And there's some, physically. And then there are those, you kind of wonder what's happening. Let's talk about, aging as it relates to all women.
So I think there are lots of social components that are going to determine and psychological components that determine how women age. Okay? A woman who lives in a comfortable environment, who has a spouse or not, who's a good job, who can take care of herself, who can take care of her kids, first of all, is subjected to less stress. She understands where the world, she's educated, blah, blah, blah. She may age differently. A woman who doesn't smoke, drink, party, sleep around, she is more like this, especially if you smoke and drink. I can promise you, you're going to look hard and old. Okay, if you smoke and drink, especially if you smoke, you're going to look dry up. There's no other way to describe it, right? Nicotine, tobacco makes you look dry. So, or young people who start vape, take that as an example. Apart from the fact that it's destroying your lungs, the bottom line is that if we smoke, we're going to age more rapidly. If we expose to stress and don't find a way to handle the stress, all the stressors, if we don't take care of our hypertension and our diabetes and the things that come across, if we don't get our mammograms and our pap smears done and manage our, like I said, diabetes and our hypertension, whatever other illnesses we are going to age faster, okay? If we don't have good social support around us, have a network of friends, don't go to church, don't treat people well and all the rest of it, we are going to age faster, okay? So aging is also related genetically, who you are, where you come from, what you do, how you exercise, how you eat, how you drink, and other things. So those are all the considerations we have to have. It is, however, very important that our aging population has facilities that care for them. First of all, to take care of their primary care, manage the pressure, blah, blah, blah. Have social services that make sure that they live in healthy environments, okay? And if we're to be nursing homes must be healthy. Women are poorer than men as we age. Women are often poor, especially in low and middle income countries, when they're old, right? And sometimes it doesn't matter how many children we have. If all of us remain poor, none of us can help each other, all right? Women will earn less, especially women who are poorer will earn less, so they have less social return as they get older. Okay, women are generally poorer. Women, we know, also are greater risk for developing diabetes, and diabetes tend to often come with hypertension. Fortunately, women tend to accept care a little more, but the bottom line is that they're still going to have strokes and heart attacks and kidney failure and other things. Okay. Because men are likely to die, to predecease their spouses or their partners, it means that you have a lot of older women who live all their life being single, not having the spouse that they've had all along, because he's gone, he died a long time ago. And that is a challenge to our older population, okay? They don't have money to fix a house, so that's when hurricane come in to go check the old lady next door. They may not have the same old house that has not been able to be upgraded, and and conditions are bad, they may be immobile, they can't see very well, blah, 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 they're going to need stronger social services. Okay? So while they may outlive the men, it is expected that because, once you get older, you increase your risk for all diseases, especially cancers and chronic diseases. So that is a challenge with living long as a woman. It therefore means that our policymakers are going to have to create facilities, right? And policies that enhance and take care of the health of our elderly women. They are going to have to, especially when it comes to their safety and all other things, their meals, everything. We are going to have to tailor our healthcare services to suit the needs of these elderly women.
Right. What about the mental aspect or the cognitive health of individuals as they age? It is believed that people who are more mentally active, in other words, people who read, people who are involved in a lot of educational and stuff like that, they tend to age better.
They tend to have less possibility for developing cognitive disorders. Uh-huh. So having dementia, whatever form of dementia. But remember also our women who have had long-standing diabetes, if it has not been fixed, they can get vascular dementia where, the blood vessels clog up and parts of the brain die and they develop dementia as well. So yes, you're very right. On the other hand, with Alzheimer's, right, which is a different form, in relation to lifestyle, it is important that women remain active as long as they can and that they do puzzles and keep conversations and go out and dance and have activities, be cognizant of the world, except from sitting and watching TV. Just sit and watch TV. The games on the little handheld, because most everybody have a little phone. They can play games that they're encouraged to look at that keep the cognitive skills alive. So we are going to when again we don't have an elderly policy. You're aware of that, right? Mm-hmm. Which is now being developed. Because I don't think there's any real elderly policy. I think the whole World Health Organization trying to work on having a policy of the health policy for the aged. And those are going to be things. But the truth is, it has to start from your young. You remember I was talking about the cycle? It has to start from your young that you are involved in activity. You get accustomed. You talk to people. You read. You do stuff. You share ideas. You watch the news. You discuss it. Even if you're watching soap opera, discuss it with your friends. Laugh. Be involved. We also, I think, one of the challenges I find with our seniors is that they don't have enough activities out there for them to go, places for them to go, bus drive, go look at the places, go remember what you used to do, talk about when you're a child, how we used to go there, we used to do that, just go out. We have to improve our social services so that our aging population, which is what we all are currently, right? The population is aging, right? Because people are living longer, our Asian population is becoming bigger, and they're going to be non-productive, and they're going to need to find ways, especially if they're cognizant, if the cognitive skills are good, of keeping them engaged. And that is how the policymakers are going to have to look at it. We're going to have 30% of our population over 80 years. Guess what? You're going to have to do something about it. Right? It means that we now need to have children that put into the social security system so there's money to spend on the older population.
Right. So Doc, one final thing, that's the last thing, and maybe in a sense it is probably a message to younger women, younger people, but generally. But as we kind of focus a bit on our women, I just want to put that out. So there's a German psychologist, Erik Erikson, who said, as older adults approach the end of their lifespan, they are more apt to conduct a life review. The elderly may reminisce for hours on end, take trips to favorite childhood places, or muse over photo albums and scrapbooks. Throughout the process, they look back to try to find the meaning and purpose that characterized their lives. In their quest to find life's meaning, older adults often have a vital need to share their reminiscences with others who care, especially family. As you reflect on your life, and one of the things people tend to do is to question whether or not they could have done better. Or whether, there are some things that they probably could have done differently. Now, based on that, what would you say to our younger population as they gradually enter the aging phase?
So I think our younger population has to be taught that each day counts. Everything you do, you're responsible for. You just don't go ahead and do things because you feel like. So just don't go ahead and have sex because your friend's having sex. You're gonna have the baby at 15 and lose all the things. Or you'd have one abortion and have a second abortion, and then when you're ready to have babies at 25, you can't contain a pregnancy. I think we need to give our children remind them that life is a long road, and they need to keep good memories. They need to make and keep good memories. They don't have the challenges that the old population have. They have vaccines, and they have food, and they have education, and they have a lot of things, recreation and stuff. We have to teach them to take life one day at a time and to enjoy all the amenities, not to take them for granted. Because there are populations in the world today, if you are a Palestinian adolescent, you won't be on your tablet tonight. Okay? If you are a Sudanese adolescent living, or young woman living in a camp that was bombed by Israel yesterday, Israel bombed yesterday? Right?
I saw something. Yeah, I didn't get the entire story, but I did see something.
If you were a Sudanese living in a refugee camp, it will be hard, and you probably will make notes of things that happen every day so you can look back and see how it's gotten better. We need to remind our children not to take it for granted, and that's the responsibility of us older adults, of parents, that we need to make it positively experiential for our children, and not to reproach them, but to encourage them to enjoy the good life. To enjoy life and all its challenges, to be able to make decisions, to be able to understand what's good and what's bad, how to mitigate, how to get around, who to go to, how to solve this problem, how to fix it, how to contribute to the fixing. Because a lot of children think that you have to do everything for them. What is your role? How can you make a decision? So that their life is a lot more fulfilled and it's something they want to appreciate. They're not just going through the motions, that they become very cognizant of themselves as citizens of the earth, with rights, but also with responsibilities.
Yes.
But before we go, we have 2 minutes, and there's a population of women that we want to recognize specifically, and that is our nurses. I can tell you that when I came out of medical school, one of my colleagues who had graduated 2 years before me said to me, "Hey, Sonia, the nurse is the boss. If you want to have a good professional life as a doctor, cooperate with the nurses. They've been there, they have the clinical eye, they have the experience, they might not have the same level of knowledge, but I can tell you, without the nurses, I don't know that I'd be able to navigate as well as I did. I worked in a crazy ER, and I can just look at my nurses and they'll say, oh, Nixon, all right, you want XYZ, because we became so collaborative. So tonight I want to laud all the nurses who work in very bad conditions, right? Who get small incomes, but who remain committed to giving primary care and first point of care, right? First contact at point of care to our Grenadian population and the people in Carriacou, and the nurses in Carriacou especially, because I know they've had a hard time post-burial. So I want to thank the nurses. I want to wish them Happy Nurses Week. You guys rock. Yeah, I know some of us don't do as well as we could, but guess what? Those of us who's kind of back, we can fix this and we can become better nurses. I wish you a Happy Nurses Week. I wish all your dreams for a better system comes true, so you can give even more of your better selves as we aim to build this country. Happy Nurses Day when it comes, and please enjoy the week. And I hope that our population gives you the kudos and the respect and the love you really and truly deserve, because I know it is not easy. We draw up those who kind of dragging behind, but for the most part, I think our nurses are quite dedicated. It's that group of, and they're also mothers who have to do the dual role of professionals, right, and mothers, often in very, very difficult conditions. So happy Nurses Week to my nurses.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Well, folks, that's all the time we have. But just before we wrap it up, I just want to leave just a few lines with you from one of my favorite sites as it relates to preparation for this program, Healthline. Healthy habits, and we're talking women's health here. So our women, healthy habits are the best way to avoid disease, prolong your life, and live more happily. But of course, in the chaos of a woman's daily life, healthy living may lack or may take backseat to chores, work, busy schedules, and more. But there are a couple of things you can do to, of course, help you to have good health and to live longer, healthier lives, like get moving, walking, jogging, etc. Eat a balanced diet, healthy aging, a healthy sex life, time for a baby, good parenting, breast health, dealing with stress, and avoid known health risks. And of course, if at least you pay attention and follow a couple of those, you might find yourself living a little longer than you probably may have. So, of course, I want to join Doc in, of course, saluting our nurses, of course, who do such a wonderful job, supporting and all of that. Thank you for all that you've done. Doc, we have Mother's Day coming up. Of course, I'm taking, I'm moving early. Happy Mother's Day from, of course, the program. I guess I would be able to say it again, but with Doc here, we want to wish you all a happy Mother's Day.
All the mothers, happy Mother's Day.
Yes.
You're not wishing me happy Mother's Day?
Yeah, of course. You have a special greeting, a special Mother's Day greeting.
Yeah.
So, folks, we thank you all again for staying with us. It was indeed a pleasure sharing with you as always, and we urge you, as always, to at least take one thing from the program, apply it to your life, and of course, let's help improve our wellness. Yeah. Thank you again, and of course, I'll be back tomorrow. You can join me 8:30 for our Kaiso Talk program, and get ready. King of the Grill is coming up. Thank you, everyone, and do have a wonderful evening. All the best.
Night, everybody.
Yes, indeed.
Broadcasting from the top of Observatory Road, St. George's, Grenada. Cancer.
Drug abuse, cancer,